And they've actually done it in Urdu, aimed specifically at the Pakistani population, who they think will all vote Green.
Okay, so I was in contact, or he was in contact with me, with a friend of mine who travelled through Gorton yesterday. He lives just down the road. He said it's often said that it's 30% Muslim. He said, forget that. He said that is more. It's more like north of 50%.
Wow.
He said literally he drove through it and it had that generic moment that he had in Birmingham.
Yeah.
He said there was nobody. There were no white faces at all. And so the battle, Gorton and Denton, a fantastic moment. We're only, a couple of days from it. It's almost like a political excitement. So either the Greens win with that argument, i.e. there are more of people of colour who feel disaffected by the political.
And who are never going to vote Labour because of Palestine.
Probably not going to vote Labour because of Palestine. Or there are enough white people enormously concerned about what their future looks like. But the one thing they're not going to vote for, they are not voting Conservative.
No.
Right? So
they're not even getting a mention, are they?
No, they're not getting a mention. I think it's a massive problem for them. And also, secondly, the other people they're not getting a mention are Labour.
Yeah.
They're wandering around. They know that they are completely done for. So Burnham had a triumph.
Yeah, he did.
Because
he did. Well, I said that on the day that he was told he couldn't run. I said we're heaving a huge sigh of relief here because his career has been saved, because he would have probably had a pretty good chance of losing. Starmer went up there yesterday and refused to meet anybody from the public. He just went and did a sort of stunt with the local Labour Party.
What do you mean he didn't go walkabout?
No, he walks into this room where they're all cheering and clapping as if, that's the local kind of reaction to seeing Keir Starmer. It wasn't. It was all a fix, and he wouldn't go out and actually meet anybody from the ordinary members of the public because he knew he would get booed and he knew that he would get heckled.
Right. Well, when you reach that point as Prime Minister, after all, he's only 18 months, 19 months in.
Yeah.
Right. So he's already getting this. I hate him turning around saying, we want to change this country.
I know.
Actually, do you know what?
We want him to stop changing the country.
We want him to stop changing the bloody country.
Exactly.
And we'd like it to be successful and homogeneous.
Yeah.
We're not going to make it like that. It's every 5 minutes, another X thousand people arrive here under some guise or another who want to fundamentally, they want to change the country.
Yeah.
There was a very good piece by Matthew Syed, in the Sunday Times. Right. He talked about the balkanisation of Gorton and Denton. He went up there for 2 days.
Right.
Now remember, Matthew Syed, I'd say it was liberal, actually. Anyway, he did his 2 days, and then he wrote his piece. Right. His last paragraph was the devastating piece, which is basically saying, look, we've been lied to. The numbers of people in our country who fly Palestinian flags, but have no sense of being British, has grown.
Yes.
We've been lied to.
Oh, it has, no question.
And politicians should hang their heads in shame. This was a piece, 2,000, 3,000 word piece. Yeah. Look, they're behind a paywall.
Yeah.
Very few people are going to read that, right? And very few people are going to get to the end of it. But the truth about the matter is that Gorton and Denton represent much that has changed in our country and much that worries ordinary people, because they say, well, this is where we are today.
Yeah.
You know, huge areas of the country actually changing before our very eyes. What's that going to be like in 20 years' time? What's it going to be like for our grandchildren?
Well, it's not going to be any better. And we'll come back to that in a minute, because we've got a guest here. We're running a bit late. We've got Mike Neville to talk to, former police detective. Mike, very good morning to you. Welcome to the new Mike Graham Show. Yeah, hello, Mike. Nice to see you again. Really good to see you. A couple of quick questions for you about what happened, obviously, yesterday. Peter Mandelson picked up in sort of late afternoon, was released around about 2 o'clock in the morning, we think, by the police. They released him on bail, I'm told, which is different to what happened to Andrew, who was released under investigation. What's the difference between those two things?
Well, released under investigation is literally the police can decide when you're going to come back. With bail since 1922, since 2022, sorry, the police have got time limits, so they've got 3 months to get him back, and if they need another 3 months, it's an inspector has to decide, and if they want another 3 months, it's a superintendent, and then another 3 months, it's a magistrate's court. So there is real time agendas on each session of bail, and so it would seem to me that they've got something where they feel that they may be able to charge, whether it's in 3 months or 6 months, but they have something definite in my view.
Right, and of course, in the case of Mandelson, they'd already searched his properties before they arrested him, whereas with Andrew, they arrested him and then searched his properties. Is that part of the difference as well?
Well, that depends how you're going to play it, really. I suppose if you get a search warrant, you've got to tell somebody. You've got to go to the magistrates and you've got to go to the court, and people will know that you're applying for a warrant. Perhaps in the case of Andrew, they simply didn't want any opportunity that anybody would know about this and be able to tell anybody. So that might be the tactic. It may just be that one was dealt with by the Metropolitan Police and one by Thames Valley Police, and each different police force has its own different ways of doing things. But what it does, of course, you need, when you enter a premises like with Andrew there, you need to have him there, and then you can search. When you've got a warrant, you can search whether they're there or not.
Right. And how long do they get to search in Andrew's case? Because I think as of yesterday, they were still searching Royal Lodge. I imagine they're still doing it today.
Well, again, it depends on what you're trying to find. If you've got a search warrant for a massive article, then if you can't find it. If you're looking, however, you've got a search warrant for a needle in a haystack, you can search for as long as you want. And of course, what they're looking for there will be digital devices, things, computers, tablets, phones that may have some information on. And so they will spend a lot of time looking for these things. So a search can go on for as long as you want. In the most serious cases, it will all be videoed so they can show exactly what they found and when they found it.
Right. Go on.
Mike, my question was, why did the police go there at 4:30 in the afternoon? Why didn't they do what was more conventional, which was to go there, say, at 7 or 8 in the morning? Do you think that they had agreed that this was the pickup time?
I don't know, Kelvin, because that seems to me, I agree with you. Normally you're arresting people at 6 o'clock in the morning. So you've got the whole day ahead, you've got the element of surprise. I'm sure that Thames Valley and the Metropolitan Police are speaking together. Perhaps something turned up that they needed to speak to him urgently. Perhaps they got something they just needed to speak to him right now. It does seem strange. So there is something that actually triggered that. I don't think it was by chance. Either they've received some new information or they've found something on a computer or a tablet that they needed to speak to him and put it and formalised the inquiry. I think the Metropolitan Police may have been embarrassed that they did all this sort of nicey, go and arrest, don't put him on bail, don't arrest him. And Thames Valley Police have stolen the march on the whole thing.
Yeah. One thing I was pleased to see was actually it wasn't the perp walk, but clearly somebody had been tipped off, and the police were going to knock on his rather enjoyable. I see it's now described as a £7.5 million house, whereas prior to the Labour government coming in, it was £11 million house. So if you want to do well, don't get a Labour government. So would they literally, somebody have said, or do you expect that's what cameramen would be doing? They would be hanging around his house thinking this was going to happen anyway.
And I imagine somebody told them. I mean, it's either done officially by the press office or some police officer with a phone call into a journalist who's a friend of his. I doubt that the journalists were hanging around randomly outside Mandelson's door at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So God only knows. But as you say, there's some great photographs there. The press have done a great job on this case so far.
It was an extraordinary looking setup there, because I know that area reasonably well.
Your own house is there?
I mean, it's not, no, but I did, when I first came back from America, I did live in Primrose Hill. In one of the little mews houses. It was lovely. And I couldn't afford to buy it at the time. It was 300,000 quid to buy the little mews house. And it's now probably worth God knows what, $1.5 million or something. Anyway, but it's in a little private square and all of that. And I remember just back to the good old days of when I used to do what those photographers were doing, just hanging around outside people's houses. And you'd be there sometimes for days on end, and you just, occasionally you'd get a tip, oh, we think something's happening today. But even if there wasn't anything happening, you'd just be there. You're constantly standing there, waiting for something to happen.
I like Mike's idea that Scotland Yard press office are tipping off photographers ahead of actually tipping off Mandelson. And so,
I think he's so universally disliked that everybody wants to see.
I mean, that's a fantastic aspect of this story, is that there's nobody in there that you feel vaguely sorry for. You're absolutely delighted that people are getting a tap on the shoulder.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, even George Galloway said it this morning. So do you suspect, Mike, that this is going to go on for quite some time? From what you're explaining about the investigation, it doesn't sound as though you're expecting it to move particularly quickly.
No, so what you've got a load of digital investigation here. You've got specialist digital forensic officers who will be pouring through all those electronic devices, the computer, tablet, phone, trying to extract data, trying to find emails, trying to find links. You'll have people designing charts which show who sent what to who and who's connected and all this sort of thing. And they'll produce a package of evidence which then they'll brief the senior investigating officer, somebody like I was, a DCR or a detective superintendent, who will then decide the strategy. But of course, extracting data from electronic devices and finding all the attached files and whatever else is not a simple thing.